Hello, and welcome to Uncorking a Story. I'm your host, Mike Carlin, and today I want to share with you a few thoughts I have about betting on yourself. And I was inspired to think about this topic because I've been following, like many people, this story about GameStop. This company who's having a surge in their stock share price. And it's like, why? Why is this happening? The company's gonna go out of business. I mean, if you've been in a GameStop recently, no, you haven't. I know you haven't because they're all empty. Anyway, the reason why this got me to thinking about betting on yourself is that, all these big institutional investors, and this is the part of the show where I pretend I know what I'm talking about, right? I'm no master of the universe finance guy. But you know what? Right now though, I am wearing I am wearing one of those stupid, obnoxious vests, like the finance guys wear. What are those vests made out of? There's a Vineyard Vines thing. I'm wearing one of those fleece vests, so I can pretend to know what I'm talking about here. But no, there was a bunch of people who bet against GameStop, right? And to me, there's something amoral about short selling. If you don't know what short selling is, I don't either. Just kidding. I know what it is a little bit, but it basically works like this. There's a stock out there that you think is overpriced, right? In this case, GameStop, and people think it's going to go down. So you bet on it to go down, and you do that by selling a bunch of shares that you don't own. This is where the complexity comes in a little bit, but you sell a bunch of shares you don't own with the intent of buying them back at a lower price by a certain day. So that's known as short selling. And to me, it's like betting against somebody, and I don't like it. I don't like it. Now, I'm sure it makes people money. I know it makes people money. But to me, it's just like this idea. I'd rather bet on something or bet for someone, than bet that something's going to be devalued. It's each their own, I guess. But in this case, there was a problem. So you had a bunch of individuals who got together and were like, hey, not so fast. So they started buying up blocks of GameStop, and that drove the price up. And there must have been a lot of people doing this because it went up drastically. Drastically. And, these hedge funds now are kind of screwed because they've got to buy back the shares that they've already sold for a much higher price than they were anticipating. Now, look, who's going to get hurt here? It's not the hedge fund guys. They make money either way. Who gets hurt here are, at the end of the day, it's going to be, people like you and me somehow. I don't know. Anyway, but this really isn't about, I'm not here to talk about short selling. I'm not here to talk about GameStop. And again, I do pretend to know what's going on. But what it got me thinking about was betting on yourself, right? So these were people who were betting against GameStop. But I want to talk about betting on yourself. And as you might imagine, I have some feelings about that. I was somebody who never wanted to be in the business world. I've mentioned that before on Uncorking a Story. When I was in high school and all throughout college, my dream was to go on and get a PhD in psychology. I wanted to teach. I wanted to, counsel people. And, I never really thought of a career in business, but I stumbled into a career in marketing and a career in market research, and which I love. I really do love what I do. But when I was kind of making my way in this business, I saw this group of people who kind of were in business on their own, and you can do that in my industry. So in the qualitative market research industry, doesn't that sound sexy? By the way, hey, what do? I work in qualitative market research. Come on. If I were a single man laying that down, forget about it. No, but there's a lot of people who do what I do who work for themselves. The cost of entry is low. You don't need a lot of overhead. It's consulting, if you will. So, I knew a lot of people who made a very good living, particularly in those years when there's not a pandemic. But they made a very good living just kind of doing this work for themselves, not having a boss, so to speak, or a corporate structure. Anyway, that was always appealing to me. I'm somebody who does value my independence. I value my freedom. I don't like having to answer to people who are not my customers. I'll do anything for my customers, But, sometimes I could be a little difficult to manage as an employee. I'll admit that. I have opinions. I'm not afraid to share them. I never, God, I work for some of the biggest companies of the world. I worked for MasterCard, I worked for Unilever. I never dealt with politics well. I just couldn't do it. And I know that's such a big part of the job. It's not just, for those of you listening, it's not just when you work in marketing. Yeah, being a good marketer, that's like half of your job. The other half is navigating the politics of a large organization. I wasn't really so good at that. I'm not what you call an an ass kisser by any stretch of the imagination. Anyway, I wound up. Let's see what happened. I was working for a startup consulting firm in the U.S. and we are doing somewhat well, but we struggled and I wasn't. To be quite honest, I was not a good fit for that culture. Something happened. I was promised one thing. They didn't deliver on it. No hard feelings now, but we wound up parting ways. And, I, at that point in time said, you know what, I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to try and do, I thought it opened a door for me to do what I always wanted to do. So I wound up talking to a former client who set me up with a consulting arrangement. So I had some guaranteed income, and then I was off to the races, kind of going and finding business. And it was great. I mean, it was hard, it was stressful, but the point is, I bet on myself to win, and I did wind up winning. Now, there's been tough years since then, but the point is, I did it, and I'm happy I did, even though it was stressful. I'm very happy that I did that, and it taught me a lot about myself. To be honest with you, now I realize over the years I've interviewed many people in my career. Both in my day job as a moderator, but also in on this program. And two of the people I interviewed on this program really came to mind as I started to think about this idea of betting on yourself. One of them is an entrepreneur by the name of Dave Mezzepelle. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's also an author. So I did get a chance to interview him about his book series. And the other guy who came to mind was Andy Greenfield, who actually holds a very special place in my heart because his former company, Greenfield Consulting, was the one that really turned me onto this career that I wound up having as a qualitative moderator. So I went back and I listened to some of the things that, it was probably 7 or 8 years ago now that Andy had told me and that Dave had told me. And I found a couple of nuggets that I think you might find interesting about funding your dreams and believing in yourself. The first lesson that they both taught me was, just don't dream it, go out and do it, go out and execute it. And here's what Dave Mezzepelle has to say about that.
I believe that people that have great ideas, the talent is not in the idea itself. It's in executing what you just said. So many people have so many great ideas, but they don't execute them. And I consider myself an executor. I have to hit the ground running. And people shouldn't let their dreams just like flounder. Execute it. And if you don't know how, there's plenty of resources to help you. So I feel strongly about it. Yeah, you could go on and on about all these great ideas out in cyberspace, but you have to execute. You have to make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. Because if you just sit there and let it spin, you're always going to wonder what you should have done and if you should have done it.
You don't want to get to the end of your life and have regrets about the things that you didn't do or the things that you didn't try. And, Dave brings up a really good point. It's not enough just to have the idea. You have to have sort of that drive within inside you to execute it. And the way actually Andy Greenfield talks about it is putting thought into action. And he's got a pretty similar take as to what Dave had to say. Here's Andy Greenfield.
And again, this is all in retrospect. It was an example of, a certain element of my nature manifesting itself, which was, let's just do it. Don't question it. Let's just do it. Kind of going from, thought to action without worrying a lot about, did this make sense? How hard was it, etc. Which is sort of a useful orientation for an entrepreneur to have.
There you go. Don't question it. Just do it. That's like the old Nike slogan, right? Just do it. If you want to get out there and exercise, just do it. If you want to get out there and bet on yourself, do it. But Andy's right. Ideas are cheap. Anyone can have them. But to take a thought or an idea and make it real, to turn that into something real and tangible, that's where the real talent is. And taking the time to do it and to persevere will pay dividends. Dave talked about, all the work required to bring his first book to market. Now, this is, of course, after Dave has started, a couple of different businesses. He decided to take some of his knowledge and put it into a book. And, those of you who are authors know, and I know a lot of people listening to Uncorking a Story are interested in the writing world. That it's not easy. It's not easy. Like, writing a book is the easy part. Honest to goodness, I tell this to authors. Writing a book is the easy part. The hard part is finding the agent, negotiating with the publisher, selling the book in terms of doing the marketing you need to do to actually get it in people's hands and raise interest on it. That's all hard. There's no easy way to do it. And here's what Dave has to say about that.
It sucks to have to find an agent, a literary agent. It's brutal. And then it sucks to have to go find an author or a publisher. It's a really pain in the ass. But you know what? Once you do it, you're like, wow. Even if you're not making millions of dollars, the fact that you have a published book and it's something you believe in and people are reading it and appreciating it and you're helping others, at least in our case, we help others. And it's worth that work. It's worth doing whatever you can to execute your dreams.
The hard work will be worth it. Do whatever you need to do to execute your dreams. I couldn't agree more. And, when I was talking to Andy about it, and specifically, around Andy's first company that he started, he told me that, frankly, he told me that, he had one client where he was before, and then he decided to go hang out his shingle. And this one client he assumed would follow him. He thought they would be his big client. I think it's Molson Beer. You'll hear about it in a second. And the fact of the matter was he didn't earn a penny from them during his first year after starting that business. So, and there's a reason why I'm bringing this up. I'm gonna have you listen to Andy, and then I'll reflect on it in a moment. So here's Andy talking about it.
And the funny thing is, you leave, and I left assuming I was going to get a ton of business from Molson. And my first year, I got not $1 from Molson for a variety of reasons. And Molson eventually became a very big client of mine, but I left believing I was going to, this is going to be the fuel for my liftoff, and nothing happened. So business ended up coming from places you'd never expect it to, pure serendipity. I'm sitting on a plane and having a conversation with a guy who was one of the senior guys at First Boston, who says, this is interesting stuff you do. Why don't you call this other guy? And because First Boston had never done any market research. So I get them, I get Price Waterhouse, a bunch of things fell into place, and Greenfield Consulting was off to the races.
I mentioned before that I worked for, both Unilever and MasterCard. And, back in the days when I would talk to my, colleagues, now my former colleagues, about, this dream I had about going out on my own and starting my own consulting business, all of them said the same thing to me, which was, the moment you do that, let us know, we'll give you business. And what Andy just said was painfully true. I didn't earn any business from any of those people right away. Certainly not in the first year. In fact, the only business I earned from my old employer, Unilever, was from a guy who I never even met during my tenure there. He got my name from somebody else. And the point is, if you're going to do this, if you're going to, go out and hang your own shingle or whatever you want to call it, you got to be prepared to know that no one's going to give you anything. All those people who tell you they're going to give you something, they're not going to do it. You actually have to go out there and you have to earn it yourself. And I know that sounds like common sense. Like, of course you've got to earn it yourself, but don't go into it thinking you can rely on all those people who promised you something, because you're going to set yourself up for disappointment and some lean times. But here's the thing that shouldn't discourage you. If you believe in you, bet on yourself. I'm not suggesting that you go out today and quit your job. You know, I'm not suggesting that at all. But maybe start by don't place the big bets first. Maybe start by placing smaller bets on yourself. If your dream is to start a business like mine was, maybe seek out some freelance work first in that business. Do some moonlighting, put in some extra hours. Get a taste for what you're in for before you make the big decision. If kind of betting on yourself means that you really want to write a book, and I know what it takes to do that. Number one, guess what? The book is not going to write itself. You're going to have to do the work. But, if the prospect of writing 80,000 words is too much for you to deal with, maybe start off with a short story. Maybe don't try out of the gate to write that, great big American novel. Start a little bit smaller, but start the work. Do the work. Let the rubber hit the road, so to speak. Now, listen, when you're betting on you, it's going to be very important that you have people in your life who are also willing to bet on you. Now, importantly, here's the thing. You can't ask for their permission. And that's, you can't ask if you can do something, that you're going to set yourself up for failure if that's your mindset. But, instead, just share your dream with these people and observe their reactions. If they pose nothing but barriers for you to not do what you want to do, and, they just start by telling you all the reasons why something that you're thinking is a bad idea, just realize that these are not the people you want in your corner. And I'm not judging them. I certainly had them in my life. Just know that, it could be that they're afraid to see you fail. They might love you so much. They were afraid for your failure. And that could be very true. That could be very true. And it's not to suggest that, you cut these people off, but these are not the people who are going to help you. But on the other side, all those people who just blow smoke up your ass and tell you have the greatest idea ever, and they don't offer any sort of counterpoints to you, or they don't offer any challenges to you. These are people who you don't want in your corner either, because if they don't care enough, to kind of push you a little bit and to challenge you a little bit, then, they're not going to be helpful. Just as the people who are always negative aren't going to be helpful, those people who are super positive are not going to be helpful either. Instead, the people that you want to listen to and the people you want in your corner are those people who will challenge you, but at the same time, while being critical and while offering challenges to you, they also send a message, how can we support you? How can we help you? Those are the people who are going to be, much more important for you to surround yourself by. They're not going to just give you a blank check. Number one, they're going to push you a little bit. They're going to test your resolve, but they're also going to say, hey, look, we see how much conviction you have about this. How can we help support you? And it's not just financial support. So much of it is emotional. Again, whether you're writing a book, whether you're starting a business, whether you're trying something for the first time, you need as much financial support as you need. You also need emotional support as well. Now I can tell you that spouses have a hard time with this. In many cases, I don't want to speak for all spouses, but spouses have a hard time with this. They've come to know you in a certain way. They've come to know you as one thing. And the thing is, they might be very comfortable with the way things are. They don't like the idea of rocking the boat, and change brings risk, especially when you're talking about starting your own business or doing something like that, and here's the thing though, if your spouse or partner isn't on board, just don't let that lack of support deter you. Now, this doesn't mean that they're not important people. They are, they of course they should be. But you can't let their lack of support deter you. If you let their resistance or their negativity prevent you from doing something that you're dreaming of, that's going to lead to resentment down the line. And that's not good for anybody. So just to drive this whole episode home, I have, 4 things that I want to summarize for you right now. And the first thing is that if you have a dream or the desire to create something or to do something different with your life, bet on you. You've got to be the first investor here. And your confidence in placing that bet will gain the confidence of others. And then, you'll get other people to bet on you too. So that's the first thing. The second thing, remember that ideas are cheap. Action takes talent. It's okay to dream, but the rubber has to hit the road at some point. So eventually you have to stop planning and start doing. And now point number three, door number three, Carol Merrill. Know that your eventual success will not come from where you expect it to. It's going to be up to you to go out and earn it. It's not going to be given to you. That's a hard fact that many of us had to learn the hard way, but it's nevertheless true. And lastly, people are going to challenge your assumptions and abilities. They're going to challenge you on your idea, and that's not a bad thing. That's actually a good thing. But the thing is, you need to mute those people who provide resistance without an offer of support, as well as those who, offer nothing but praise. Neither of those two types of people are going to help you. Instead, to make your dream a reality, surround yourself with people who will push you while they look for ways to support you in the pursuit of your dream. Woo, heavy stuff, all based on GameStop. All based on observations I had around this, I don't want to call this silly thing with GameStop, but all this other news this week with a retailer that's falling apart whose stock price happened to soar. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. And as always, thank you. Thank you so much for listening to Uncorking a Story. And if you liked what you heard here, please subscribe to us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, please be sure to tell a friend about Uncorking a Story. As we always will welcome new listeners. We welcome them like Journey with open arms. And if you have something to say about the show, please leave a review. And be sure to go to uncorkingastory.com or wherever you get your podcast to check out our previous 61 episodes. And, of course, be on the lookout for another new episode early next week. Thanks so much.